What if you're pushing your plants with synthetics, high par, ppms, and CO2 with great airflow? The solution or the answer to this is if you're pushing your plant with all these various things, the only way you're going to really be successful and get a high quality product is if you identify which thing you are not pushing it to the max and then increase that. I talk about something here on the channel all the time, law of minimum, law of tolerance. This one specifically is talking about the law of minimum we have to knuckle down on. And this is how I approach all of my clients that want to grow synthetic or want to push it to the limits. Is this something I'd recommend? I think you could get your plants pretty much there by doing other things. Good water, some 10-11 care, being consistent, soil biology, things along those lines, and allow the bacteria to kind of do their job. You've heard me say that. But in this conversation, the key is when you increase something specifically, you have to learn to identify the toxicity and the deficiency and how it appears in your plant, specifically actually the toxicity. And also not just the toxicity, but the consequence of that toxicity of how it affects all the other minerals or the plants in general. Because a lot of times if you push something too much, it will cause a lockout in something else. And now you think you're running into a deficiency problem, but you're actually running into an excess problem. So going back over to it, let's say if you're increasing the CO2 dramatically. Well, you have to, like I said, be able to identify how the CO2 toxicity shows up on your plant. That's the first thing. And second, after you increase that CO2 and you find that level of toxicity, you back it off a little bit, then you go to the next thing. So let's say it's airflow or temperature or watering or parts per million. I'll give you another better example. Let's say you want to have an EC range of 2 to 3 EC when you're giving it to your plants. Well, you're not going to be giving an EC of 2 or 3 on one watering. You'll be stacking your nutrients on a daily basis. You'll be giving your plants something every single day of the week, basically with your watering. And that's how you increase your parts per million without overdoing it on a single feeding with your plants. Still in that situation, even if you stack that and you increase the nutrients to that next level, you have to then ask yourself, are you watering enough times, right? Or are you giving enough water? Or maybe you're giving too much water to the point where the nutrients is flowing out of your pot. So there, the water comes back into excess of toxicity. Being able to identify if you're giving too much of one nutrient, because like I talk about all the time, if you're giving too much phosphorus or potassium, it will lock out your iron, your zinc, your calcium, and your magnesium, right? If you're giving a toxicity of phosphorus, potassium. And each of these things, like, is going to be me re-saying the same thing. Once you hit your limit on one thing, you have to go back and find what is the next thing you're giving the least of and increase it up to its toxicity and go back over and keep repeating this process, whether it's your frequency in your watering, whether it's the amount of water you're giving, or if it's the temperature, maybe it's too warm of a temperature. A lot of times when you have a high parts per million of CO2, you want to normally have a warmer room. Well, sometimes you can have too warm of a room, right? Then it goes over into your humidity. If you have too high of a humidity, then you have a BPD issue, right? But if you have the just right amount, the plant's perspirating, more water's flowing through the plant, the more nutrients is being provided to the plant, right? You can't just ride a high synthetic nutrients and be good and you have good airflow and your temperature is good, right? If you're going to max it out in one thing, once again, you have to identify the least product or the least of whatever you're giving and jack that up and then keep repeating that process. More often than not, you hear me talk about it all the time with trace minerals, the importance of drops balance, because that alone, just the power of trace minerals is something that more often than not, most people don't pay attention to it because they don't see it, right? They can feel the wind hitting them. They know if that's too much. They can see how much water they're providing their plants and know how much if it's too much, if it's flowing through the bottom of the pot. If they're giving too much light or too much heat in the room, it shows up in the plants fairly quickly. These are all things that people, when they can visually see it, they know that they have some level of responsibility to manage the problem. But with trace minerals and water, those are things that we don't see, we neglect. Most people have never heard of them. And that's why I'm always telling people, before you jack up all these other things, which are going to cost you a dramatic amount of money to do that, higher electricity bill, more fertilizer, all these other things, why don't you eliminate things that could affect your grow, right? That's the toxins in water. Like for example, it could be volatile organic compounds through bleaching of plastics, or it could be heavy metals, or it could be excess of sodium. These types of things that could affect a variety of other things going on in your plant. So I always tell people, remove the toxins, increase the trace minerals. After you do that, then go over and start to mess with your light, mess with your frequency in your watering, mess with the parts per million of your fertilizer, play around with your soil biology, because remember, that's also a big one I always talk about, right? Because bacteria, you have billions of bacteria doing a job for you. So what's better, right? Increasing the parts per million of one thing, or increasing your workforce in your organization to make 1,000 parts per million work just as well as 3,000 parts per million. The law of minimum, law of tolerance play a role in all of these things. And you can't just jack up one or two or three things in your grow and think you're going to get better results. Yes, you might get better results, but is it going to be sustainable? You know, a lot of times growers will have one great grow and then they'll have 3 or 4 bad ones. And yeah, you're probably going to damage a few plants figuring this out throughout a couple grows. But once you identify these things, you're going to have your master recipe on what you think is going to work best for the majority of the plants you grow.